Be very selective about which cards you upgrade. Don't start upgrading your cards until you've used the character several times and you are sure that that's the character card you're going to stick with. For example, when I first started playing, I upgraded Heidi because she's both smart and funny. But despite her being an inexpensive tank character for the early levels, she featured less and less in my deck as the game went on. Grinding for those upgrade materials becomes the biggest bottleneck in this game. It's a freemium game after all. So, as I say, resist the early game urge to level everything up. Try experimenting with combos. As you gain more cards and become better at the game, you will learn which cards are needed to counter the characters that the enemy will throw out. For example, if you are struggling with Pirate Butters, you may learn that simply distracting him with a tank is all that is required to put him to bed. In this case, the pigeons are doing the heavy lifting while Scuttlebutt does the distracting. On a similar note, try a tank and a debuff character. Throw down a tank such as Scuttlebutt, then behind him let Storyteller Jimmy loose. The tank soaks up all of the attacks, but those attacks are lesser because of Jimmy. Anything else you throw at the enemy will make short work of those units. Just make sure you spawn the debuff character a little way back so that the tank is engaged first. The fireball knocks enemies away. Throw out a headhunter, and if that character reaches the boss, wait for it to throw out some reinforcements and then blast them with the fireball. This gives you some all-important time to do damage to the boss before your headhunter is destroyed. It works better in standing fights, PvP and such, because the enemy will try to spawn other characters nearby. You can then use your fireball to knock them away so that again, your headhunter has a clear shot at the enemy player. Alternatively, you can use the fireball to protect your headhunter. Big Gay Owl was being attacked by these enemies up here. A fireball gives him a little more time to attack the enemy boss. Buying an extra locker is okay. Down at the bottom it says use 2 cash to unlock an extra locker. This is almost always worth it. You are going to keep receiving cash from opening packets, achievements, and what you get from lockers and such. Probably don't spend more than 2 cash unless you are on the hunt for a certain material that you are really struggling to find in other places. For example, right here I really needed arrowheads, so I kept spending. Just be aware that this is how mobile games get you. They restrict certain cards and certain materials so that you feel compelled to spend real money. A quick note on the game's adverts. If you are offered an advert rather than using cash, then be aware that if you spend the cash, then the advert offer goes away. Also, be careful with these adverts because they are very naughty. They make it very difficult to get off the screen without visiting the website first. See, look at how tiny they made this cross up here. Low energy cards keep the deck moving. Having a bunch of cards that require just 2 energy is not a bad thing. When you are playing, you may want a certain card to appear. If you have a bunch of 2 energy cards, you can use them up pretty quickly with the hopes that the next card that appears is the card that you want. Don't assume that a card sucks just because it takes fewer energy bars or because it isn't epic or legendary. Take the Ike card for example. I kept him alive and his attack went up an additional 125, which means in this case he could one-shot these low-level enemies. Replaying certain campaigns for certain rewards. You find the different campaigns you have completed using these buttons here. With these, you can find old campaigns and replay areas that you have already completed. To level up certain cards, you need to replay certain campaigns. I didn't know this. I wanted to level up Kyle because during the early game, he turned my rats and pigeons into swarms of death. I didn't know you had to go back to the first campaign and work through them to get the feathers and arrowheads that I needed. Once on the desired campaign map, you can flip through the rewards looking for the ones you want. Be aware that you can only replay campaign levels up to 15 times each, which is more reason not to waste the resources once you've earned them. You will learn to play more tactically over time. As the game progresses and you get more cards, you will start to fight more tactically. An early game favourite of mine is to release rats and pigeons and let Cal buff them up with an extra attack. Tactically, you may counter something like this with Sheriff Cartman. since his area of effect attack will easily take down an entire flock of pigeons or rats. There are times when you simply cannot complete a level because you are too underleveled for the boss, but there are times when a good strategy will make the job a little easier. For example, Inuit Kenny has a very powerful face-to-face attack. If he is stood close to you, then he can do an awful lot of damage in a short space of time. However, he is very vulnerable to aerial attacks because he cannot retaliate. Plus, if you keep him at a distance, you stand more chance of surviving. For example, the super fart knocks him away, giving you more time to attack him before he makes his way back up to you. The point is, you can change up your character cards in your deck to better suit the boss and the level that you are struggling to beat. Positioning does matter in South Park Phone Destroyer. I touched upon this in the previous tip, but the more you play the game, the more you learn how to play tactically, and it turns out that positioning can make a big difference in this game. For example, here I have a tank leading up front and a healer near the back. This is a nice setup where the tank at the front can take the most damage, while the healer and my player remain safe. This is pretty much the same again, but you can see the positioning of the tank up front, followed by the healer. Put Ike all the way back here during a boss fight, so that by the time he reaches the boss, he has been boosted maybe at least twice. Tailor your approach for difficult missions. For example, there is a mission that starts with being overwhelmed by rats. In this case, I thought Cartman's shooting skill was the best approach, but I learned that the super fart is actually the most effective, if not the most efficient method. The point being, you can learn through experience about which enemies are going to spawn on which level in which mission and so forth. You can then arrange your deck to best counter the enemies that you know you're going to face. After that, all you have to do is just hope that the right cards will be drawn at the right time. Let the enemy get near to you. Getting other characters onto your side of the arena means that you get to hit them with a few free shots from your player. Some players get around this with ranged units. The enemy has positioned Timmy right here. Timmy is able to get off several free shots without my player being able to retaliate. Don't wait for the card to fully charge. A mistake that new PvP players make is to wait for the card to fully charge before putting it down. This wastes valuable seconds. Instead, grab the next one that is about to fully charge, the one you want to pick, place it there and hold it until it goes from red to full color. It sounds like nothing, but it makes you a more efficient player. The same characters and cards will be grayed out. Some cards are grayed out during combat because you cannot play the same character in different costumes. The point being that as you are building your deck, be aware that this may be an issue, albeit a temporary one. I like playing Butters cards, and as you can see here, both Butters and Jimmy are grayed out. Still, the characters die off fairly quickly, so having grey cards isn't really a big problem. It is built to be played over a long time. It is a freemium game after all, and that means grinding that gets more and more difficult the more intensely you play. As a freemium game, it wants to make it difficult to get a lot in a short space of time, but easy to get lots of things over a long space of time. This is how they encourage you to spend real money on the game. So try to avoid any methods where you try to power level your way up. The truth is, the longer you play the game, the slightly easier it becomes. PvP losses are not complete losses. Do remember that you still get phones even if you are defeated. You can see up at the top here, even though I am defeated, it shows that I've still destroyed some phones. This means that I can still get the PvP packs, even if I get defeated during my PvP matches.